Genesis. In chapter 1, we have the creation.
I know you've been introduced here before, but I don't know if everyone here knows your name yet, Seth. Could you introduce yourself to everybody?
I'm Seth.
Seth, nice to meet you.
I'm in 8th grade.
Boom, go 8th grade.
Okay, so chapter 1 we have creation, and then chapters 2 and 3, just Adam and Eve living in the garden, and chapter 7, verses 1 through 24, the flood with Moses in the ark, and Genesis 8, the flood ends, and Genesis 11, the Tower of Babel was built, where they tried to build a tower to heaven. It didn't work. Genesis 16 through 25 is pretty much Abraham's story. First, God visits Abraham, and then Abraham pleads for Sodom, and then Sodom is destroyed. Then Isaac is born to Abraham, and then God tests Abraham. Joseph, one of Abraham's sons, was sold as a slave by his other brothers. Then he is put into prison, and he interprets Pharaoh's dream while in prison. Jacob's sons go to Egypt in Genesis 42, and they return in Genesis 43. Joseph plans to punish his brothers for them putting him into prison. But then, in the next chapter, he forgives his brothers. Then Jacob's family moves to Egypt, and Jacob and Joseph both die in Genesis 50. That's it.
I did just like random stuff about Genesis, the weird facts.
I don't think they can hear you in the back. You gotta speak up.
I did the weird facts about Genesis. So.
What's your name?
I'm Zach.
Zach.
No, and I'm also in 8th grade.
Where?
Richmond.
Where do you go to school?
Bridgman.
Woo! Go Bees!
There are 50 chapters in Genesis, and it takes about 3 hours and 46 minutes to read it in one sitting. It's not.
Did you read it yourself to figure that out? Oh.
Good question.
It's never officially stated who wrote it, but Jesus calls it a book of Moses. The contents, like what happens in Genesis, like take place over more time than the rest of the books of the Bible put together. Like the timeline, like the amount of time from the beginning of Genesis to the end is longer than the rest of the books put together in the Bible.
Wow.
Which is 2,286 years pass over Genesis. And then Genesis talks about the beginning of the universe, life, death, sacrifice, language, sin, marriage, prophecies, the Sabbath, redemption, mankind, and then like families are all mentioned, like started basically in Genesis. And then we got Genesis from the Greek word, but like Genesis itself means origin or beginning. The Greek word is translated as source or generation, and the Hebrew name for this book means in the beginning. Noah's Ark, Noah's Ark is half the size of the Titanic. And in the book, God closes the door of the ark after all the animals are put inside. And then going back to the time span of Genesis, this is just estimated, but out of the 4,100 years covered in the Bible, 2,286 are in Genesis, so that's over half. And then 2,000 of those years are in chapters 1 through 11 alone. Yeah. That was awesome. That was great.
All right. I am Drew, and I am a sophomore. Woo. Where's my clapping?
There you go.
So, since Genesis is the first book of the Bible and the beginning of time, there's not a whole lot of cultural context to start out with because it's the beginning. So I'll go over the geography of Genesis and highlight mainly Abram's life because that's what Elisha is going to be going through. So I don't know if you can see it, but most of Genesis happens in what we call the Middle East today. Palestine, Israel, Jordan, Iraq, and Egypt are the main places. And the book doesn't move around a whole lot. And before Noah, it's hard to pin down places because it's likely during the flood that the land shifted around a lot, or that they moved. So there's not many places mentioned before Genesis 7 with Noah. But I'll go ahead and highlight Abram's life. So he was born here. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
Okay. In a place called Ur, and I guess the name is lengthened now. And he moves with his family up the river all the way to Haran. And then this is where in chapter 11 of Genesis the call of Abram happens. God calls Abram to leave his country. And then so he moves down across this way through Canaan. This is what Canaan was. And he moves down through here and then goes into Egypt. This is the Nile and then the delta there. And this is where in chapter 11 or 12, I think it's 12, he denies his wife being his wife and he says it's his sister and he's rebuked for that. And then in chapter 13, which Elisha is going through, he comes back up through into Canaan, and that's where chapter 13 takes place. And also another point to mention, I don't know if Elisha is going to say this, but Lot was Abram's nephew, according to the genealogy in chapter 11. That's the context.